When Senna Blackwood stepped forward to confess to a murder she didn't commit, she never imagined the true killer was watching from the shadows, or that he was the alpha heir, whose family would demand her execution. She certainly didn't expect him to publicly claim her as his mate to save her life, binding them both in ways that would transform her from condemned prisoner to something far more dangerous. The blood pooled across the marble floor of the Silvermoon Council chambers, dark and accusatory in the morning light. Councilman Thaddeus Greywolf lay motionless, his throat torn by what could only be claws, and the gathering crowd of pack members whispered the name that made Senna's blood freeze: Mira. Her younger sister stood trembling at the chamber's edge, her hands covered in blood from where she'd tried to help the dying man. At 15, Mira was still learning to control her shifts, still struggling with the wolf that raged beneath her skin during every full moon. And now, with the most powerful wolves of the Northern Territories assembled for the annual council gathering, she stood accused by proximity alone. Who did this? Elder Corvina's voice cracked like a whip across the stunned silence. The ancient wolf's silver eyes scanned the crowd with predatory focus. This is sacrilege. Murder within sacred grounds carries only one sentence: death. The word went unspoken but hung heavy in the air. Senna watched her sister's face crumple, saw the moment Mira understood what would happen. The investigation would be swift, brutal. They would use the old ways, forcing suspects to touch silver, reading the pain in their wolves, extracting truth through agony. Mira, already traumatized from finding the body, would shatter completely. I did it. The words left Senna's mouth before her conscious mind could stop them. Every head turned toward her, and she stepped forward from her position near the servants' entrance, her chin raised, despite the terror clawing at her insides. I killed Councilman Greywolf. Mira's eyes went wide with horror. Senna, no. Silence. Elder Corvina stalked forward, her movements still fluid despite her centuries of age. You confess to this crime, Omega? Omega. The word stung as it always did. Senna had never shifted, never felt the wolf that should have lived within her. At 23, she was an anomaly, wolf-blooded but powerless, relegated to serving the true wolves of Silvermoon City. She cleaned their halls, prepared their meals, and kept her head down. Until now. I confess, Senna said, not daring to look at Mira. He cornered me last night. Tried to. She let the implication hang, knowing Thaddeus's reputation would fill the gaps. I defended myself. What? A ripple went through the crowd. Thaddeus was known for his wandering hands, his abuse of power. It was believable. Horribly. Perfectly believable. Liar. The voice came from above, from the observation balcony reserved for the highest-ranking wolves. A figure dropped from the 20-foot height, landing in a graceful crouch that spoke of supernatural power. As he rose, Senna's breath caught. She'd never seen him before, but she knew who he had to be. Niklas Frostborn, heir to the Northern Pack, son of the Alpha King. He was supposed to be traveling the distant territories, learning governance before his ascension. But here he stood, his unusual amber eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. He was devastating. Tall and broad-shouldered, with ink-black hair that fell past his collar and features sharp enough to cut. But it was the way he moved, controlled, dangerous, predatory, that marked him as apex even among alphas. She's lying, he repeated, prowling closer. Elder Corvina's eyes narrowed dangerously. You dare call a confessed criminal a liar, young Frostborn? Niklas circled Senna slowly, and she fought the urge to back away. There was something unsettling about his presence, something that made every instinct scream danger despite her lack of wolf senses. And when he passed behind her, she felt the heat of him, caught a scent like pine forests and winter storms. I call her exactly what she is, he said, stopping directly in front of her. Those amber eyes held hers, and she saw something flicker in their depths: knowledge, perhaps, or recognition. This Omega couldn't have killed Thaddeus. She has no wolf, No claws, no strength to tear out a throat. I used a blade, Senna said quickly, her voice steadier than she felt. A silver knife from the kitchens. Where is it then? Niklas asked softly, dangerously. I threw it in the furnace. Destroyed the evidence. He leaned closer. Close enough that his breath stirred the loose strands of her dark hair. Liar, he whispered. The word meant only for her. Then louder, addressing the room. The wound patterns are all wrong for a blade. These are claw marks. Deep, precise. Made by someone who knew exactly where to strike, perhaps. You question her under silver then, Elder Corvina suggested coldly. The truth will out, one way or another. Senna's heart hammered. Silver interrogation would reveal her innocence immediately, and then they'd turn to Mira. But before she could speak, Niklas did something that shocked everyone. No. The single word carried the weight of absolute authority. I claim her. The silence that followed was deafening. Senna stared at him in shock, certain she'd misheard. Claiming was sacred among wolves. A public declaration of intent to mate. Unbreakable, once spoken before witnesses. You can't be serious, Elder Corvina breathed. She's an Omega. She's confessed to murder. Your father will, quote, my father isn't here. Niklas's voice carried an edge of something wild. But I am. And I claim Senna Blackwood as mine. Power, by ancient law, she falls under my protection until the claim is resolved. She falls under my protection. This is madness, someone shouted from the crowd. She killed a councilman. Did she? Niklas turned to face the assembly, and Senna saw several wolves actually step back from the force of his presence. Or did someone else kill Thaddeus and hope to let an expendable Omega take the fall? His gaze swept over the crowd, lingering on certain faces. Someone who knew she'd be blamed. Someone who was watching, waiting for the perfect scapegoat. Senna's breath caught. He knew. Somehow, this stranger knew she was innocent, but more troubling did he know about Mira. The law is clear? Niklas continued. A claimed wolf cannot be executed without trial by combat. And since my dear Senna has no wolf to fight with. He smiled. All teeth and danger. I stand as her champion. Anyone who wants her death can go through me. The room erupted in chaos. Wolves shouting, arguing, demanding justice. Through it all, Niklas stood perfectly still beside her, a wall of controlled power. He hadn't touched her since making the claim, but she could feel him there, like gravity pulling at her bones. Why? She whispered, barely audible beneath the noise. He turned those amber eyes on her, and for a moment, she thought she saw them flash gold. Because I know what it's like to carry someone else's sins, he said quietly. And because the real killer is still in this room, thinking they've won. His words sent ice through her veins. If he knew she was innocent, if he suspected the truth about Mira, then claiming her wasn't protection, it was a trap. But for whom? The guest wing of the Silvermoon Council Hall had never housed a prisoner quite like Senna. Technically, she wasn't even a prisoner. Niklas's claim had placed her in a strange limbo between condemned criminal and protected mate. The room they'd given her was luxurious by her standards, with its soft bed and private washroom, but the locked door and guards outside made the truth clear. She paced the confines of her gilded cage, her mind racing. It had been 3 hours since Niklas's shocking claim, 3 hours since her world had turned upside down. Through the tall windows, she could see the moon rising, almost full. And somewhere in the building, she knew Mira was probably terrified. The door opened without warning, and Niklas entered, carrying a tray of food. The guards didn't even try to stop him. No one stopped the alpha heir. You need to eat, he said, setting the tray on the small table. I need answers. Senna shot back, surprised by her own boldness. Why did you claim me? What game are you playing? He settled into a chair with predatory grace, gesturing for her to sit across from him. When she remained standing, his lips quirked in what might have been amusement. No game, he said, I'm trying to prevent a massacre. What? Sit, he said, and something in his tone made her obey despite herself. Tell me about your sister. 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 Senna's blood turned to ice. I don't know what you— Stop. The word carried power, an alpha's command that would have forced a wolf to obey. But Senna had no wolf, felt only a strange tingling where the compulsion should have taken hold. Niklas's eyes widened slightly at her resistance. Interesting, he murmured. Then, I was in the room when Thaddeus died. Hidden, watching, investigating reports of his activities. I saw a young wolf lose control when he grabbed her, saw her shift partially in panic. It was self-defense, but she's too young, too traumatized to survive a trial. Senna felt tears threatening. Then why not just say that? Why this elaborate claim? Because Thaddeus wasn't just any councilman. He was working for someone powerful, someone who wanted him to silence certain bloodlines. Your sister's reaction might have been self-defense, but she was always meant to die tonight, just not by Thaddeus's hand. What are you talking about? Niklas leaned forward. There's a conspiracy within the Northern Territories. Ancient bloodlines are being systematically eliminated. Wolves with certain gifts are disappearing. Your sister is one of them. And so, I suspect, are you. I have no wolf, Senna said automatically. No, he agreed. You have something else. Something that let you resist an alpha's command. Presentation. Something that's been dormant, suppressed, but still there. He stood abruptly. The claim will protect you both for now, but there's a price. What price? Tomorrow night is the full moon. The claim must be partially sealed, or it becomes void. He moved toward the door, then paused. I won't force anything on you, but we need to make it convincing. The real killer is watching, waiting to see if we're genuine. If they suspect this is just protection, they'll kill Mira anyway, Senna finished. And you? His expression was unreadable. I'll return tomorrow. Try to rest. And Senna? He turned back. Whatever power you're hiding, you might want to start figuring it out. You're going to need it. The door closed behind him with a decisive click, leaving Senna alone with the terrifying realization that she was trapped between a false confession and a false claim, with only a dangerous stranger standing between her family and death. The full moon hung swollen and silver above the Silver Moon Council Hall, its light streaming through Senna's window like liquid accusation. She could hear wolves howling throughout the compound. Some had already shifted, running beneath the ancient light. But here she stood, unchanging, wearing the ceremonial dress someone had left for her. It was midnight blue, embroidered with silver threads that caught the moonlight, far finer than anything she'd ever worn. The message was clear. Tonight, she had to look the part of an alpha heir's chosen mate. A knock preceded Niklas's entry. He too had dressed for the ceremony, wearing formal black with silver clasps, his dark hair pulled back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. But it was his eyes that caught her. They held flecks of gold now, his wolf rising with the moon. You look, he started, then stopped, something unreadable crossing his features. Are you ready? To pretend to seal a mate bond with a stranger while my sister hides in terror? No, I'm not ready. Mira is safe, he said quietly. I've had my personal guard watching her. No one will touch her tonight. The kindness in his voice almost undid her. Why are you doing this? Really? He crossed to the window, staring out at the moon. 6 months ago, my younger brother disappeared. He was investigating the same conspiracy. I mentioned wolves with rare gifts vanishing or dying in mysterious accidents. The last message he sent me was a single word: Silver Moon. You think Thaddeus was involved? I know he was. His death wasn't part of my plan, but when I saw you step forward, saw you take the blame. He turned to face her. It was an opportunity. The real orchestrator will reveal themselves trying to eliminate you and your sister. And when they do, you'll avenge your brother. Perhaps. His expression darkened. Or perhaps I'll find him alive. Senna moved closer, drawn despite herself. What was his gift? The one that made him a target? He could sense truth in any form. Lies, hidden feelings, secret intentions, nothing could be concealed from him. Niklas's jaw tightened. A dangerous gift in a world built on deception. And you? What's your gift? He smiled, sharp and dangerous. I can see what others truly are, beneath skin and pretense. It's how I knew you were lying. How I know you're not really an Omega. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. You're something else entirely. Something they tried to bury so deep even you don't know what you are. Before she could respond, bells began to chime the ceremony call. We don't have to complete the bond, he said quietly. Just the first seal. A bite, freely given and received. It will hurt, but I know what it entails. Senna had seen other ceremonies, watched wolves claim each other beneath the moon. But I can't bite you back. I have no fangs. No, he agreed. But you have something else. Trust your instincts. The ceremony ground was a circular chamber open to the sky, ringed with witnesses. Elder Corvina presided, her face carved from stone. Other council members watched with varying degrees of suspicion and disgust. And there, barely visible in the shadows, Senna spotted a figure that made her heart race, someone in a dark hood, features completely obscured, watching with an intensity that felt predatory. Who is that? She whispered to Niklas. I don't know, he replied, tension radiating through his body. But they arrived this morning, claiming to be an investigator from the capital. The ceremony began with ancient words in the old tongue. Niklas translated softly, his breath warm against her ear. Beneath moon's eye, we witness the binding. A claim made in protection becomes a bond sealed in choice. When Corvina gestured, Niklas took Senna's hands. His skin was fever hot, his wolf close to the surface. I claim you, Senna Blackwood, he said, loud enough for all to hear. Do you accept? This was her last chance to refuse, to face execution rather than binding. But Mira's life hung in the balance. I accept. Power? Then seal it, Corvina commanded. Niklas's eyes flashed gold. His features began to shift, not fully, but enough that fangs descended. He cupped Senna's face gently, tilting her head to expose her throat. I'm sorry, he whispered, then bit down. Pain lanced through her, sharp and shocking, but beneath the pain, something else stirred. Something that had been sleeping her entire life suddenly snapped awake, rising to meet the intrusion of his wolf's essence. Power flooded through her, ancient, wild, and absolutely foreign. The world exploded into sensation. Where Niklas's fangs pierced her throat, fire and ice warred beneath her skin. Senna's vision fractured. She could see the ceremony ground, but also something else, something layered beneath reality, like double-exposed film. Every person in the circle suddenly appeared different. Where Elder Corvina stood, Senna saw a massive gray wolf superimposed over her human form. The other council members showed their wolves too, brown, black, silver, all shimmering like ghosts around their bodies. But the hooded figure, where they stood, Senna saw nothing. A void, an absence that hurt to perceive. Her knees buckled, and Niklas caught her, his arms strong around her waist, powered. Blood trickled from the bite, and protocol demanded she bite him in return to complete the seal. But she had no fangs, no wolf to call upon. Yet something else rose within her, older than wolves, different. Her hands moved of their own accord to his throat. She felt power gathering in her fingertips, not claws but something else. Light. Pure, burning light that made several witnesses gasp and step back. What is she? Someone whispered. Senna pressed her fingers to Niklas's throat, and where she touched, marks appeared, not wounds, but symbols, glowing silver white against his skin. They spread like living tattoos, Ancient words in a language she didn't recognize but somehow understood. Mine, bound, protected. Niklas shuddered against her, his eyes rolling back as the marks took hold. She felt their connection snap into place, not the typical mate bond of wolves but something far stranger. She could feel his heartbeat as if it were her own, sense his emotions like colors at the edge of her vision, and through him, she felt something else. Another presence, weak but familiar. "Your brother," she gasped. "He's alive. I can feel him through you." Niklas's eyes snapped open, now burning with desperate hope. "Where?" But before she could answer, the hooded figure moved. They raised a hand, and darkness poured from their fingers, not shadow, but absence, a hungry void that devoured light. "Abomination," a voice hissed from beneath the hood. "The Moon Sage bloodline was meant to die out. You should not exist." Moon Sage. The words hit Senna like physical blows, awakening memories that weren't quite her own. Her grandmother's stories, dismissed as fairy tales, warnings about hiding their light, their true nature, because the wolves would fear what they didn't understand. The darkness rushed toward them, and instinctively, Senna threw up her hand. Light burst from her palm, not the gentle glow from before, but a brilliant silver flare that met the darkness head-on. The two forces collided with a sound like tearing silk, and several wolves cried out, forced to shield their eyes. "Protect the witnesses," Niklas commanded, his alpha authority ringing out. His guard immediately moved to surround the council members, but the hooded figure laughed. "Protecting the very ones who voted to eliminate her kind? How noble, young Frostborn." The figure lowered their hood, revealing a face Senna recognized with dawning horror. Cassandra Nightfall, the capital's High Inquisitor, the one who decided which bloodlines were too dangerous to be allowed to survive. "You," Elder Corvina breathed, "but you weren't supposed to arrive until after the Omega was executed?" Cassandra smiled coldly. "Plans change when moon sages crawl out of hiding." "Although," her gaze fixed on Senna, "you didn't even know what you were, did you? Your family hid it so well even from you." "Moon sages?" Senna's voice shook. "What are you talking about?" "The ancient enemies of wolfkind," Cassandra said. "Beings of pure lunar light who once enslaved our people, forced us to serve as their guardians. We thought we had eliminated the bloodline decades ago, but here you stand, awakened by an alpha's bite." She laughed bitterly. "How poetic. The very thing meant to bind you to him has freed your true nature." "You're lying," Niklas snarled, stepping protectively in front of Senna. But she could feel his confusion through their new bond, his uncertainty. "Am I? Tell me, young alpha, what do you feel through your bond? The warm comfort of a wolf mate? Or something else, something that makes your wolf want to submit and protect in equal measure?" Senna felt Niklas's internal struggle, felt his wolf responding to her presence in ways that clearly disturbed him. But beneath the confusion, she also felt his resolve solidify. "I don't care what she is," he said firmly. "She's under my protection. Then you'll die with her." Cassandra raised both hands, darkness gathering. "And your brother will remain where he is buried beneath the old temple, kept alive only to suffer for his gift of truth-seeing." The revelation about Niklas's brother shattered his control. With a roar that was more wolf than man, he launched himself at Cassandra, shifting mid-leap into a massive black wolf. But the Inquisitor was ready. Her darkness wrapped around him like chains, slamming him into the stone floor with crushing force. "No." Senna's light flared instinctively, cutting through the darkness to free him. But the effort left her gasping. The power still too new, too uncontrolled. "Seize the Moon Sage," Cassandra commanded. "By order of the capital, she is condemned." Several guards moved forward, but others hesitated, confused by the conflicting authorities. Elder Corvina raised her hand. "Wait. The law is clear. A sealed mate bond cannot be broken by execution without cause. The claim stands." "The claim is void," Cassandra snarled. "Moon sages cannot mate with wolves. They can only enslave them." And yet the bond exists, Corvina said carefully. I felt it form. Different, yes, but genuine. During the argument, Senna knelt beside Niklas, helping him shift back to human form. Blood ran from wounds where the darkness had touched him, and she pressed her glowing hands to the worst of them, watching in amazement as they began to heal. Quote, "We need to run," he whispered, his voice rough. "Now, Mira. My guard will protect her, but if we stay, Cassandra will find a way around the law." He gripped her hand. "Trust me." Senna looked at the chaos around them, wolves arguing, choosing sides, some drawing weapons. The hooded investigator had shattered the fragile piece of silver moon, and violence was seconds away. "Together," she agreed. Niklas shifted again, and without thinking, Senna swung onto his back, her fingers tangling in his midnight fur. The moment she made contact, their bond flared to life. She could feel his thoughts, his desperate plan. The old forest, sacred ground. She cannot follow there without cause. They burst through the circle of witnesses. Cassandra's shriek of rage followed them, along with tendrils of darkness that Senna deflected with bursts of light. Other wolves joined the chase, some trying to stop them, others clearly trying to help, creating chaos that covered their escape. The forest embraced them like an old friend, ancient trees towering overhead, moonlight filtering through leaves turned silver. Senna had never moved so fast, clinging to Niklas's back as he wove between trees with supernatural grace. Through their bond, she felt his exhilaration mixed with fear, not for himself, but for her. They ran for what felt like hours but was probably minutes, until they reached a grove where the trees grew in a perfect circle. Niklas shifted back, breathing hard, and caught Senna as she slid from his back. "Sacred ground," he panted. "Even the Inquisitor cannot violate it without proof of crimes." "She'll manufacture proof," Senna said, her new awareness showing her the threads of power surrounding the grove. "Protective. Yes, but not impenetrable. Plan." "Then we have time to plan." He pulled her deeper into the grove, where an ancient stone altar stood covered in moss. "Tell me about your family, your grandmother, anything about moon sages." Senna sank onto the altar, exhaustion hitting her all at once. She told stories about women who could call down moonlight, who could heal or harm with a touch. She said we were bridges between earth and sky, but that the wolves had forgotten our true purpose, which was balance. We weren't meant to rule or enslave. We were meant to keep harmony between the wild magic and civilization. She looked at her still glowing hands, but something went wrong. The stories say both sides forgot the old compact, turned on each other. Niklas sat beside her, and she noticed him unconsciously leaning toward her, their bond pulling them together. "My brother suspected something like this. Atai." He said the oldest texts mentioned beings of light who walked alongside the first wolves. "You really think he's alive? Under the old temple? I felt it when you touched me during the ceremony. Through your power, through our bond, I could sense him. Weak, in pain, but alive." His hands clenched. "Cassandra will pay for that." "We can't fight her alone," Senna said practically. "She has the authority of the capital, and I barely understand what I am, let alone how to use these abilities." "Then we learn." Fast, Niklas stood, pacing the grove. "There are others who oppose the Inquisition. Wolves, who remember the old ways, who don't believe in bloodline purges. If we can reach them." A howl cut through the night long, mournful, and terrifyingly close. "They've found us," Senna breathed. "No," Niklas said, his face grim. "That's not Cassandra's hunters. That's something else, something that shouldn't be here." The howl came again, and this time Senna's new senses picked up what Niklas already knew: the wrongness of it, the taint of darkness that clung to the sound. "Corrupted wolves," he whispered. "Cassandra's experiments. Wolves she's broken and rebuilt with her void magic." Through the trees, eyes began to appear, not the natural gold or blue of wolf eyes, but empty black voids that reflected no light. The corrupted wolves emerged from the shadows like nightmares given form. Where normal wolves moved with natural grace, these creatures jerked and twitched, their bodies fighting between wolf instinct and void corruption. Black veins pulsed beneath their fur, and when they breathed, darkness leaked from their mouths like smoke. "Stay behind me," Niklas commanded, shifting into his wolf form. But Senna felt her power responding to the wrongness of these creatures. The light within her recognized its opposite, recoiling and surging in equal measure. "No," she said quietly. "We fight together." The first corrupted wolf lunged. Niklas met it midair, his jaws clamping down on its throat. But instead of blood, darkness poured out, burning his mouth. He yelped, releasing it, and Senna reacted without thinking. Light burst from her hands. Not the gentle healing glow or the defensive flare from before, but something focused, sharp as a blade. It sliced through the darkness, and the corrupted wolf collapsed, its black veins fading as death released it from torment. "Thank you," a voice whispered on the wind, and Senna realized with horror that the wolf's original spirit had still been trapped inside. 3 more attacked simultaneously. Niklas fought with savage grace, but each bite, each claw strike, caused him pain as the corruption tried to spread to him. Through their bond, Senna felt his agony and rage. She raised both hands, pulling on the moonlight itself. It responded eagerly, streaming down through the canopy to pool around her. When she released it, it exploded outward in a silver wave that sent the corrupted wolves flying. But more kept coming. Too many. "The altar," Niklas shouted through their bond. "It's a focus point. Use it." Senna pressed her palms to the ancient stone, and immediately felt the power thrumming beneath old magic. Wolf and sage combined from when the races had worked together. She pulled on it desperately. The grove erupted in light. Every tree began to glow with silver fire that didn't burn. The corrupted wolves howled in pain, the void corruption unable to withstand the pure magical energy. Some fled, others collapsed, finally free in death. But the effort was too much. Senna felt herself falling, her vision going dark. The last thing she saw was Niklas shifting back to human form, catching her before she hit the ground. When she woke, they were no longer in the grove. The ceiling above her was rough stone, and the air smelled of earth and ancient things. A cave, she realized. Somewhere deep. "You're awake." Niklas sat beside her, and in the dim light, she could see burn marks on his face and arms from where the corruption had touched him. They were healing, but slowly. "Let me." She reached for him, but he caught her hands. "Save your strength. We have bigger problems." "What happened?" "After you lit up the grove, more came. Not just corrupted wolves, Cassandra's human soldiers. I had to carry you out." He gestured to the cave around them. "We're in the old tunnel system, the one that connects to the temple where your brother island." She squeezed his hands. "We're going for him." "It's too dangerous. If Cassandra has had him for 6 months, then he's waited long enough." Senna stood, swaying slightly but determined. "She revealed his location to hurt you, to make you reckless. But she also gave us an opportunity. It's a trap." "Of course it island, but Niklas." She cupped his face gently, thumb brushing over a healing burn. "Through our bond, I can feel your pain. Not just physical, the guilt, the fear that he's suffered because of you. It's eating you alive." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "He's my little brother. I was supposed to protect him. Then let's go protect him now, together." Something shifted in his expression, vulnerability giving way to determination. "When did you become the brave one?" "When you claimed me." "Power," she said simply. "The bond goes both ways. Your courage feeds mine, and apparently, my stubbornness feeds yours." He laughed, short and surprised. "Is that what we're calling it? Stubbornness? Would you prefer moon sage magical imperative?" "Definitely stubbornness." He stood, pulling her up with him. The temple is through here. But Senna, his expression grew serious. What we find might not be. He might not be the brother I remember. As she laced their fingers together, her light naturally flowing to ease his pain. Then we'll heal him, or we'll free him. Either way, we don't leave him there. They moved deeper into the tunnels. Their combined light, his wolf's eyes and her sage glow, illuminating passages that hadn't seen visitors in decades. The closer they got to the temple, the more wrong everything felt. The air grew thick, oppressive, tainted with void magic. Finally, they reached a massive stone door, carved with symbols that hurt to look at, perversions of both wolf and sage imagery, twisted into something obscene. She corrupted a sacred place, Senna breathed, anger flaring. This was where our kinds once met in peace. Can you open it? She approached the door, feeling the void magic trying to repel her. But beneath Cassandra's corruption, the original magic remained. Senna pressed her glowing hands to the stone, seeking that older power. The door ground open, revealing a chamber that made them both recoil. The walls were lined with cages, most empty, but some containing the remains of wolves who hadn't survived Cassandra's experiments. And at the center, suspended in chains of pure darkness, Marcus, Niklas breathed, rushing forward. Marcus Frostborn hung suspended in void chains, his body terrifyingly still. Where Niklas was all dark intensity, his younger brother had been light golden hair, now turned gray, skin that had once glowed with health, now pallid and marked with black veins, similar to the corrupted wolves. Tyrna? Don't touch the chains, Senna warned, grabbing Niklas before he could reach for them. They're feeding on him, using his truth-seeing gift to power something. What? Niklas's voice cracked with rage and anguish. Senna let her new senses expand, following the flow of dark energy. The chains weren't just holding Marcus, they were connected to something deeper in the temple, pulling his power downward into... Oh goddess, she breathed. She's not just experimenting, she's building something. A weapon that uses gifted wolves' abilities without their consciousness. Marcus's eyes opened empty, black as the void that held him. Brother, he said, but his voice was wrong, layered with Cassandra's influence. You came, just as she predicted. The moon sage and the alpha heir, walking into the heart of the web. Pascus. Marcus, fight it, Niklas pleaded. I know you're in there. I am. Screaming. Always screaming. Marcus's head tilted unnaturally. She makes me watch. Makes me see the truth of what she does. Did you know, brother, that our father signed the original order? The one that authorized the bloodline purges? Niklas staggered as if struck. You're lying. I cannot lie, Marcus said with terrible calm. My gift won't allow it, even corrupted as I am. Father feared the moon sage's return, feared losing wolf supremacy. So he gave Cassandra carte blanche to eliminate threats. No. But through their bond, Senna felt Niklas's world shaking. His father, the Alpha King, complicit in genocide. The truth hurts, doesn't it? Cassandra's voice echoed through the chamber as she materialized from the shadows, accompanied by dozens of guards. Your precious family built their power on the bones of extinct bloodlines. Senna stepped forward, her light flaring. Release him. Oh, I intend to. Right after you take his place. Cassandra smiled coldly. You see, a truth seer is useful, but a moon sage? Your power could fuel my weapon for centuries. Imagine it void and light combined, able to strip any wolf of their gift, render them human, helpless. Monster, Niklas snarled, shifting partially, claws extending. Am I? I'm trying to save our species from civil war. The gifted grow too powerful, threaten the natural order. Better to remove those gifts entirely, create equality through reduction, by quality. That's not equality, Senna said. That's mutilation. says the last moon sage, whose ancestors enslaved thousands. Cassandra raised her hand, void chains shooting toward Senna. This time, Senna was ready. She didn't fight the darkness, instead, she embraced the light within her fully, letting it explode outward. The chains dissolved before they could touch her, and several guards cried out as the light burned away the corruption Cassandra had placed in them. Power impossible, Cassandra hissed. No, Senna said, understanding flooding through her. Natural. Light and void. Sage and wolf, we were meant to balance each other, not destroy. She looked at Marcus. Your void corruption, and my light, they're two halves of the same power. She walked toward Marcus, ignoring Cassandra's shouts and the guards moving to stop her. Niklas fought beside her, keeping them at bay while she reached for the chains. Instead of trying to break them, she fed light into them. Not aggressively, but gently, offering balance to the consuming darkness. The chains shuddered, confused, their purpose disrupted. Marcus gasped, his eyes flickering between black and their natural green. Senna? I'm here, she said, pouring more light into the chains. Both of you, hold on. But Cassandra wasn't finished. She pulled on all the void energy in the temple, the accumulated darkness of months of torture and experimentation. It rose around her like a tidal wave, ready to crush them all. If I cannot have the moon sage, she shrieked, no one can. The wave descended. Niklas threw himself over Senna and Marcus. Senna raised her hands, pulling on every bit of light she could find from the moon above, from the ancient stones, from her own life force. Light and darkness collided with catastrophic force. The temple shook, stones cracking, ancient magic awakening at the violence done in its sacred space. And then, through the chaos, Senna heard something impossible, other voices, other lights, answering her call. We are not all gone, a voice whispered through time. The moon sages scattered, hid, but we survived. And now, sister, we answer, power. Flooded through her, not just her own, but that of moon sages across the territories, awakened by her desperate call. The light grew, and grew, until even Cassandra's vast darkness couldn't stand against it. The Inquisitor screamed as the light consumed her void magic, stripping away years of accumulated power. She collapsed, merely human now, gasping on the temple floor. The chains holding Marcus dissolved. He fell, but Niklas caught him, both brothers clinging to each other as Senna stood above them, glowing like a star. It's over, she said, though she knew it was really just beginning. In the aftermath of Cassandra's defeat, the temple fell eerily quiet. Senna's light gradually dimmed, leaving her swaying on her feet. The massive expenditure of power had drained her, but she remained standing through sheer will. Marcus was unconscious but breathing normally, the black veins fading from his skin. Niklas held his brother protectively, but his eyes were fixed on Senna with an expression she couldn't quite read. What you did, he said softly. Calling others of your kind, I felt them through our bond. There are more moon sages, many more. Hidden, Senna confirmed, sinking to her knees beside them. Scattered across the territories, suppressing their nature just as I did. But when I called, she touched her chest where warmth still lingered. They remembered who they were. Cassandra stirred, trying to crawl toward the door, but guards who'd been freed from her void corruption stopped her. Without her dark power, she was just a woman, cruel and clever, but mortal. Take her to the cells, Niklas commanded. She'll face trial for her crimes. You can't, Cassandra spat. Your father authorized everything. Arrest me, and you implicate the Alpha King himself. Niklas stood slowly, his presence filling the chamber with Alpha authority. Then he'll face justice too. The guards exchanged uncertain looks. Challenging the Alpha King was tantamount to treason. You would tear apart the pack structure for her? Cassandra laughed bitterly, gesturing at Senna. For a moon sage? Your father was right, they corrupt everything they touch. Look how she's already turned you against your own blood. She opened my eyes, Niklas said firmly, to the rot that's been festering in our leadership, the fear that's driven us to atrocity. He looked at his guards. How many of you have lost pack members to mysterious disappearances? How many were told they were traitors, when really they were just born with the wrong gifts? Heir. Several guards shifted uncomfortably. One, an older wolf with graying hair, stepped forward. My daughter could speak to plants. She vanished 2 summers ago. They said she ran off with a rogue. She didn't run, Marcus whispered, his eyes opening green now, uncorrupted. I saw her in the cages. I'm sorry, Victor. She didn't survive the experiments. The guard Victor fell to his knees with a howl of grief that echoed through the temple. This ends now, Niklas declared. Take Cassandra. We return to Silvermoon to gather the council. The truth will be heard. As guards hauled the Inquisitor away, Senna helped Niklas support Marcus. The younger Frostborn was weak but lucid, his truth-seeing gift already beginning to heal from the corruption. Senna, Marcus said, his voice hoarse. I saw things while I was trapped, visions Cassandra forced from me about the moon sages. You need to know your grandmother didn't die naturally. Senna's blood chilled. What? She was murdered. By the same faction that killed Niklas's mother wolves, who believed inter-bloodline breeding would weaken our species. Your grandmother was trying to broker peace, to restore the old covenant between wolves and sages. My mother? Niklas stared at his brother. But father said she died in childbirth. Another lie, Marcus said sadly. She was killed for suggesting the bloodline purges were wrong. Father remarried within a moon's turn to someone more, aligned with his views. The revelations kept coming as they made their way through the tunnels. With each truth Marcus revealed, Senna felt the world she thought she knew crumbling. Her parents, dead in what she'd believed was a plague, had actually been poisoned. Mira's late wolf development wasn't natural. Someone had been suppressing it with tainted water supplies. Why? She asked, exhausted and overwhelmed. Why so much death and deception? Power, Niklas said grimly. Control. Fear of change. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. But you changed everything tonight. Every moon sage who answered your call, every wolf who saw Cassandra's corruption revealed they'll spread the word, the truth. And then? Senna asked. War, Marcus said bluntly. Father won't accept this quietly. Neither will the other Alpha Kings who were complicit. He looked at his brother. You'll be branded a traitor for standing with her. I know, Niklas said simply. I made my choice when I claimed her. Through their bond, Senna felt the depth of his conviction, and something else, something that had been growing since that first moment in the ceremony circle. Power. Not just the magical bond, but genuine feeling, respect, admiration. And beneath it all, we need to get back to Mira, she said, pushing away the warmth spreading through her chest. If war is coming, she's not safe. No one is, Marcus said quietly. The gifts we've hidden, the bloodlines we've suppressed, they'll all be targets now. Both sides will demand loyalty. They emerged from the tunnels to find dawn breaking over Silvermoon. But instead of peace, the city was in chaos. Wolves ran through the streets in both forms. Some buildings burned, while others glowed with protective magic. At the center of it all stood Elder Corvina, her voice magically amplified. By order of the Alpha King, any wolf found, harboring Moonsage sympathizers will be executed. The abomination Senna Blackwood is to be captured, dead or alive. That was fast, Niklas muttered. But Corvina wasn't finished. Furthermore, Niklas Frostborn is hereby stripped of his heir status for consorting with the enemy. Any who follow him will share his fate. Senna felt Niklas's pain through their bond, not at losing his position, but at the confirmation of his father's betrayal. We need to run, she said. No. Niklas straightened, his alpha presence flaring despite his father's decree. We stand and fight, not with violence, but with truth. He looked at Marcus. Can you project? Let everyone see what really happened? Marcus nodded weakly. If Senna helps, her light can carry my visions. Case. Together, the three of them walked into the main square where Corvina held court. The elder's eyes widened at their approach, but before she could speak, Marcus and Senna acted. Truth and light combined, projecting Marcus's memories into the air for all to see. Cassandra's torture chambers, the corrupted wolves, the conspiracy that went all the way to the Alpha King. The crowd gasped, cried out, some falling to their knees as they recognized lost loved ones in the cages. Lies, Corvina snarled. Sage illusions. I cannot lie. Power, Marcus said, his gift ringing with power despite his weakness. Everyone here knows this. Feel the truth of what I show you. 9. And they did. The truth-seeing gift resonated with every wolf present, undeniable and absolute. The projected memories faded, leaving the square in stunned silence. Hundreds of wolves had witnessed the truth, the systematic murder of gifted bloodlines, the Alpha King's complicity, the horror of what had been done in the name of racial purity. Elder Corvina stood frozen, her authority crumbling. Even if this is true, she said carefully, the law is the law. The Alpha King has spoken. The Alpha King is a murderer. Victor, the guard who'd lost his daughter, stepped forward. He's violated the most sacred laws of our kind, the protection of pack, the sanctity of gifts. Then challenge him, someone called from the crowd. The old way, trial by combat. All eyes turned to Niklas. As the disgraced heir, he had that right to challenge his father for leadership. But it would mean almost certain death. The Alpha King hadn't held power for 3 decades by being weak. No, Senna said suddenly. I challenge him. The square erupted in shocked voices. A moon sage challenging an Alpha King? It was unprecedented. You have no standing, Corvina said quickly. You're not Pack. I'm Niklas's claimed mate. Senna countered. The bond is sealed and recognized. By ancient law, I have the right to challenge for my mate's honor. She's right, Marcus said, his truth-seeing gift confirming it. The old laws, from when sages and wolves were allies, they're still technically valid. Niklas grabbed Senna's arm. You can't. My father will kill you. Maybe, she said, but a moon sage challenging an Alpha King? He can't refuse without looking weak. And when he accepts, she smiled grimly, the challenge circle will be on neutral ground, with witnesses from all territories. Per 5. He'll have to come out of his stronghold. Understanding dawned in Niklas's eyes. You're not planning to fight him, you're going to expose him. Power? Both, actually. She turned to address the crowd. Send word to all territories. In 3 days' time, at the full moon, I challenge Alpha King Roderick Frostborn for his crimes against the natural order. Let every wolf and hidden sage hear the time for secrets is over. The crowd dispersed slowly, many looking conflicted. Supporting Senna meant defying the current power structure, but the truths they'd seen couldn't be ignored. As they made their way back to find Mira, Niklas pulled Senna aside. This is suicide. You've had your powers for days. My father has been Alpha King for longer than you've been alive. I know. She cupped his face gently. But someone has to stand against him. And as a moon sage, I might be the only one who can survive long enough to make the truth undeniable. There's another way, Marcus said quietly. They both turned to look at him. The full covenant. If you complete your mate bond, truly complete it, not just the partial seal, your powers would merge. A bonded alpha and sage pair hasn't existed in centuries, but the old texts say they were nearly invincible. Niklas went very still. That's not just a magical binding, Marcus. It's complete unity. Senna finished. I know. I felt the edge of it during the ceremony. She met Niklas's eyes. Power. It would mean sharing everything. Thoughts, feelings, power. No secrets, no barriers. And if one dies, the other follows. Marcus added grimly. That's why the practice was abandoned. Too risky. They found Mira at a safe house Niklas's guard had arranged, and Senna nearly collapsed with relief at seeing her sister unharmed. Mira threw herself into Senna's arms, sobbing. I thought they'd killed you, Mira whispered. When Elder Corvina made that announcement. I'm here, Senna soothed. But Mira, things are about to get dangerous. More dangerous than before. She explained about the challenge, the coming conflict, the revelation of her moon sage heritage. Mira's eyes went wide. You're like the stories grandmother told. The ones about ladies of light who could heal with a touch and burn with a thought. Apparently those weren't just stories. Senna touched her sister's face gently. Mira, you might have it too. The sage blood. It sometimes skips generations, or mixes with wolf gifts in unexpected ways. Is that why my wolf is so hard to control? Because I'm mixed? Maybe. We'll figure it out together. After you fight the Alpha King, Mira said flatly. You're going to die. She's not, Niklas said firmly. Because I won't let her. He looked at Senna. The full covenant. We do it tonight. In Senna's heart raced. Niklas, that's permanent. If you're wrong about me, about us, I'm not. He stepped closer, and she felt their partial bond humming between them. I knew the moment you stepped forward at that first accusation, taking blame for your sister. You're the strongest person I know, not because of your sage powers, but because of your heart. Let me share that strength. Let me stand with you properly. It could kill us both, she warned. Then we die together, he said simply. But I think we'll live. I think we'll win. Because you're right, someone has to stand against the corruption, show both our kinds a better way. And who better than a bonded pair proving wolves and sages can be stronger together? Marcus cleared his throat. If you're doing this, we need witnesses, trustworthy ones who can attest. The bond is genuine, not coerced. But in Trinister's, Victor, Niklas said immediately. He lost his daughter to this madness. He'll stand witness. And, he hesitated. Elder Corvina. Are you insane? Senna asked. She's many things, but she's not corrupt. Traditional, yes. Rigid, absolutely. But she genuinely believes in law and order. If she witnesses the covenant and validates it, no one can question its legitimacy. That evening, in the same sacred grove where they'd first fled, an unlikely gathering assembled. Victor, Elder Corvina, Marcus, Mira, and a handful of wolves and awakened sages who'd answered Senna's call stood in a circle. Corvina looked deeply uncomfortable. I don't approve of this, but, she sighed. The law is the law. And if you're truly doing this willingly, both of you, then I must bear witness. The ceremony was unlike the public claiming. This was older, deeper magic. Senna and Niklas stood facing each other, hands clasped, as Marcus spoke the ancient words not in the wolf tongue or human speech, but in the first language, the one both species had shared in the beginning. The ancient words Marcus spoke seemed to resonate in the very air, making the trees of the sacred grove tremble. Senna felt each syllable like a physical touch, awakening something primal within both her sage nature and the wolf spirit she could feel through Niklas. In the time before time, Marcus translated as he spoke, when the moon first gave her children form, two halves of one whole were created. Wolf and sage, earth and sky, instinct and wisdom. Niklas's hands tightened on hers. Through their partial bond, she felt his nervousness not about binding himself to her, but about whether he was worthy of such a binding. The vulnerability in such a powerful alpha made her heart ache. You are, she whispered, too quiet for others to hear. You're worthy of everything. His eyes flashed gold, wolf rising to the surface at her words. Marcus continued the ceremony. Who stands witness to this willing covenant? I do, Victor said firmly. I witness their choice, freely made. I do, Corvina said reluctantly, though I maintain this is foolishness. One by one, the others affirmed their witness, even young Mira, her voice strong despite her fear. Then let the covenant be sealed, Marcus said, not with bite alone, but with the sharing of essence. Wolf and sage become one. This time, when Niklas shifted partially to bite her throat, Senna was ready. The moment his fangs pierced her skin, she released her light not as a weapon or shield, but as an offering. It poured into him through the bite, and she felt his whole body shudder. Through their expanding bond, she experienced what he did. The light didn't burn him as it would corrupt wolves. Instead, it merged with his wolf essence, creating something entirely new. His eyes, when he pulled back, were neither blue nor gold, but silver like moonlight. "Your turn," he said roughly, and Senna understood. The first time, her light had marked him. Now, she needed to accept his wolf. But she still had no fangs. No way to trust your instincts, Niklas murmured, baring his throat. Senna leaned forward, pressing her mouth to his neck. The moment her lips touched his skin, she felt it not a physical transformation, but something deeper. Her light reached through her touch, into him, and drew his wolf essence into herself. The sensation was overwhelming. Where her sage nature was cool moonlight and measured thought, his wolf was hot blood and wild instinct. They crashed together inside her, and for a moment, she thought she might tear apart. Then they merged. The grove exploded with power, not light or darkness, but something between. Silver fire that didn't burn, shadows that protected rather than consumed. Every witness gasped as the energy washed over them, healing old wounds, awakening dormant gifts. Senna and Niklas stood at the center of the maelstrom, glowing with shared power. She could feel everything he felt, his love for his brother, his grief over his father's betrayal, his growing feelings for her that went far beyond the magical bond. And he could feel hers, the fear she'd lived with hiding her nature, the fierce love for Mira, the surprising joy she found in his presence. By the first moon, Corvina breathed. "It's real. The true covenant. I haven't seen. I didn't think it was possible anymore." As the power settled, Senna found herself changed. Not physically, but essentially. She could feel the wolf now, not her own, but Niklas's, shared between them. And when she looked at him, she saw her light reflected in his eyes. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked, looking between them with fascination. "Complete," they said in unison, then looked at each other in surprise. "The bond is that strong?" Victor asked. "We're still ourselves," Niklas explained. "But, aware of each other, like having a second heartbeat." Senna nodded, then stumbled as a vision hit her, not her own, but from another sage, one of those who'd awakened when she called. "The Alpha King knows," she gasped. "He's mobilizing his forces, and..." Her face paled. "He's issued a decree. Any sage who reveals themselves is to be executed on sight. Any wolf who harbors them shares their fate. Any sage who co maras. He's forcing everyone to choose sides," Marcus said grimly. "No more neutrality." "Then we need to move," Niklas said. "The challenge is in 2 days. We need allies, and we need them now." What followed was a whirlwind of secret meetings and desperate negotiations. To Senna's surprise, more wolves stood with them than she'd expected. The truth Marcus had revealed, combined with the visible proof of a successful wolf-sage covenant, had shaken many from their blind loyalty. But others, driven by fear or prejudice, sided with the Alpha King. Families split, packs divided. The streets of Silvermoon became dangerous for anyone suspected of sympathizing with the Moon Sages. The night before the challenge, Senna couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony of their hidden safe house, looking up at the nearly full moon. "Scared?" Niklas asked, joining her. "Terrified," she admitted. Through their bond, she knew he could feel her fear anyway. "Your father is going to try to kill me." "Yes," Niklas said simply. "But he won't succeed." "You sound certain." "I am." He turned her to face him. Because you're not just a moon sage, and I'm not just an alpha heir. We're something new, something our kinds haven't seen in generations. And tomorrow, we prove that the old ways of separation and fear need to die. And turned faces. And if we die instead? Then we die together, having stood for something worth dying for. He pulled her close. But Senna, I don't intend to die. I intend to win. To build a world where Mira doesn't have to hide what she is, where Marcus's gift is celebrated instead of exploited, where the next moon sage born doesn't have to spend their life in fear. Through their bond, she felt his absolute conviction, his love not just for her but for the future they could create. It gave her strength she didn't know she needed. Together, she agreed. Tomorrow would bring the challenge. Tomorrow would bring either death or transformation for their entire world. But tonight, they had each other, and that was enough. The challenge circle had been erected in neutral territory, the ancient amphitheater between Silvermoon and the capital, where no single pack held dominance. By dawn, thousands had gathered. Wolves from every territory, awakened sages who'd come out of hiding, and even humans from nearby settlements who'd heard rumors of the unprecedented event. Alpha King. Roderick Frostborn stood at one end of the circle, every inch the predator who'd ruled for 3 decades. His wolf was legendary, massive, pure white, with eyes like frozen steel. He'd killed 17 challengers over the years, each death more brutal than the last. My wayward son, he called across the circle, his voice carrying to every witness. You would send your corrupted mate to die for your cowardice? Niklas stood beside Senna at the opposite end, their joined hands glowing faintly with merged power. I stand with my mate, he replied. As wolves and sages once stood together, before fear and hatred poisoned our kinds. Pretty words. Roderick sneered. Let's see how pretty they are when she's bleeding out at my feet. Elder Corvina stepped forward as the official mediator, a role she'd reluctantly accepted to ensure legitimacy. The terms are set. Single combat until death or submission. No interference from any party. Power 5. The challenge is for the crimes of murder, conspiracy, and violation of natural law. I acknowledge no crimes, Roderick said coldly. I've protected our species from dilution and weakness. Then let the circle decide, Corvina said. She raised her staff, preparing to signal the start. But Senna stepped forward first. Before we begin, Alpha King, the witnesses should know the full truth. She raised her voice, power carrying it to every ear. Tell them about Luna Frostborn. Tell them how your first mate really died. Roderick's composure cracked slightly. You dare speak her name? She was my grandmother's friend, Senna continued. They were working together to restore the covenant between our kinds. You killed her when you discovered it. Then you blamed her death on childbirth and married someone who shared your prejudice. And lies, Roderick snarled. I cannot lie, Marcus called from the witnesses. My gift confirms her words. I've seen the truth in the void-touched memories. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The beloved Luna Frostborn, murdered by her own mate? Enough talk, Roderick said, his form already beginning to shift. Let's end this farce. Corvina's staff struck the ground, and the challenge began. Roderick completed his transformation instantly, a massive white wolf that made even other alphas look small. He charged with lethal intent, faster than any wolf should be able to move. But Senna was no longer just a moon sage. Through her covenant with Niklas, she had wolf reflexes now. She dodged, light trailing from her form as she moved. Where Roderick's claws struck the ground, the earth cracked. She raised her hands, sending beams of concentrated moonlight at him. They struck his side, and he howled not in pain, but in rage. The light barely singed his ancient, powerful coat. Is that all? He taunted, his wolf mouth forming human words, a feat of control few could manage. The last moon sage, reduced to pretty lights? He lunged again. And this time, Senna wasn't quite fast enough. His claws raked across her side, sending her tumbling. Blood splattered the circle floor, and through the covenant bond, she felt Niklas's agony and desperate desire to intervene. "Stay," she commanded through their link. "Trust me." She pushed herself up, pressing a glowing hand to her wounds. They began to heal, but slowly, too slowly. Roderick was already positioning for a killing blow. "You know what your mistake was?" Roderick asked, circling her. "You revealed yourselves too soon. I've had 3 days to prepare. 3 days to remember the old ways of killing sages." He lunged again, but this time his claws carried something else. A black corruption similar to what Cassandra had wielded. Void magic, taken from the fallen Inquisitor's research before her capture. When his claws connected with Senna's shoulder, the corruption spread instantly. She screamed as it ate at her light, trying to consume her from within. Through their bond, Niklas fell to his knees, sharing her agony. "You see?" Roderick announced to the crowd. "This is why we separated. Wolves and sages together create weakness. They drag each other down." But as the void corruption spread through Senna, something unexpected happened. It encountered not just her sage light, but Niklas's wolf essence merged within her. And where it touched that merged power, it stopped. Not destroyed, not repelled, but balanced. Understanding flooded through her. Light and void, wolf and sage, they weren't opposites meant to destroy each other. They were parts of a greater whole, meant to exist in harmony. "You're wrong," she gasped, pushing herself to her feet. The corruption still burned in her shoulder, but she embraced it now. Let it become part of her arsenal. "We don't drag each other down, we complete each other." She reached through her bond to Niklas, drawing on their shared power. But more than that, she reached out to every witness, wolf and sage alike. "Feel the truth," she called. "Feel what we could be together." Its power erupted from her, not just light, but perfectly balanced energy. It washed over the amphitheater, and where it touched, old wounds healed. Wolves who'd lost their gifts to Cassandra's experiments suddenly felt them returning. Sages, who'd suppressed their nature for decades, found their light rekindled. "Impossible," Roderick breathed. "No," Senna said, standing tall despite her wounds. "Natural. This is what you've feared all along, not our weakness but our strength united." She moved differently now, wolf grace and sage power combined. When Roderick attacked again, she didn't just dodge, she flowed around him, light and shadow dancing. Her hands found his corrupted claws, and instead of being poisoned by the void magic, she purified it, turned it back to clean energy. "You killed your mate," she said, her voice carrying to every witness. "You murdered children, you tortured the gifted, all from fear of losing control." "I protected our purity," Roderick roared. "You protected your power," Niklas called out. "Nothing more." Father and son's eyes met across the circle, and for a moment, Senna saw something almost like regret in the Alpha King's gaze. Then it hardened back to rage. He made one final, desperate attack, pouring all his strength, all his stolen void magic, into a strike meant to end everything. But Senna was ready. She caught his massive wolf form in an embrace of pure, balanced energy, light and void in perfect harmony. "I give you a choice," she said softly, though everyone heard. "Submit and face trial for your crimes, or continue fighting and face the judgment of the very forces you've corrupted." Through her power, everyone present could feel the truth. The void magic Roderick had stolen was turning on him, recognizing the greater harmony Senna offered. He was being consumed by his own weapon. "I yield," Roderick gasped, his wolf form collapsing. He transformed back to human, aged and broken. "I yield to the moon sage." The amphitheater erupted, some in celebration, others in shock. An Alpha King hadn't yielded in living memory. Concluded. "The challenge is concluded," Elder Corvina announced, her voice shaking. "By the old laws and new covenant, Senna Blackwood stands victorious. The crimes of the Alpha King, will be judged by united council, wolf and sage together. Siam-stirring stories, the crimes of the Alpha King will be judged by united council, wolf and sage together. As Niklas rushed to support Senna, helping heal her wounds with their shared power, she looked out at the crowd. So many faces, some fearful, some hopeful, all changed by what they'd witnessed. "This isn't an ending," she announced, her voice carrying despite her exhaustion. "It's a beginning. The age of separation is over." Wolves and sages, all gifted bloodlines, were stronger together. Let any who would divide us see what united power can accomplish. Mira pushed through the crowd, throwing her arms around her sister. Marcus joined them. And Victor, and dozens of others, wolves and sages, standing together for the first time in generations. "What happens now?" someone called out. Niklas and Senna exchanged glances. Through their bond, a full conversation passed in seconds. "Now," Niklas said, "we rebuild. Not as separate species hiding from each other, but as one people with different gifts." Quote, "It won't be easy," Senna added. "Generations of fear and hatred don't disappear overnight. But today, we've proven it's possible." As the sun reached its zenith above the amphitheater, its light seemed to merge with the moon, still visible in the day sky, sun and moon together, just as wolf and sage now stood united. The Alpha King's fall marked not just the end of tyranny, but the dawn of a new age. An age where a young woman who'd once hidden her gifts now stood as a bridge between worlds, her willing sacrifice transformed into triumphant truth. Senna had taken the blame to save her sister. In the end, she'd saved so much more. 1 year later, the new council hall stood where the old temple had been, rebuilt with architecture that honored both wolf and sage traditions. Senna stood at its entrance, watching as gifted children, wolf, sage, and mixed blood, trained together in the courtyard. "You're brooding again," Niklas said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Through their covenant bond, she felt his contentment, his pride in what they'd built. The integration hadn't been smooth. There'd been resistance, setbacks, moments when the old prejudices threatened to tear everything apart. But they'd persevered. "Not brooding," she corrected. "Thinking. About how 1 year ago, I was nobody. An omega hiding her true nature, lying about herbs and luck. And now you're the bridge," he said, using the title the United Council had given her, "the one who stands between worlds and holds them together." "We both do," she reminded him. Their covenant bond had become a symbol proof that unity was possible, that strength came from connection, not isolation. Mira ran past, laughing as she practiced partial shifts under Marcus's guidance. Her control had improved dramatically once she'd stopped fighting her mixed heritage. The girl who'd once stood accused of murder was becoming a formidable guardian in her own right. "Any regrets?" Niklas asked. Senna turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd claimed her to save her, only to truly claim her heart in the process. "Never," she said, and meant it. The moon was rising, full and bright, as the sun set. In its light, she could see the truth. They'd taken the blame, faced the darkness, and emerged into a world worth fighting for. The girl who'd sacrificed herself for her sister had become the woman who'd saved two species from destroying each other. And this, she knew, was just the beginning.